first Company of Heroes was a masterpiece, a piece of RTS genius that, for me, has struggled to be topped. Often, games that are that good and that successful spawn a plethora of clones like Command & Conquer did. It is baffling to me that there were not a series of games that had a similar style and gameplay mechanics to Company of Heroes. But maybe it was just lightning in a bottle. 7 years after the release of Company of Heroes, they tried to see if lightning would strike twice. Would this be another step on the road to RTS greatness? Or would the 2006 original prove to be a phenomenon that could not be replicated? I'm Strat Tom, and this is the classic review of Company of Heroes 2. Company of Heroes 2 takes us to the other side of Europe, the Eastern Front. In this game, you play as the Soviet Union, attempting to turn back the tide on the advancing Germans. Unlike its predecessor, Company of Heroes 2 does give you a more expansive story that tells the tale of the entire Eastern campaign. The campaign starts with Operation Barbarossa and the Germans pushing into Soviet territory. Eventually you will get to the turning point at Stalingrad and follow it all the way through to the Battle of Berlin and the end of the Third Reich. Despite the fact that Company of Heroes is set on the Eastern Front, a front that gets less attention in mainstream media, the game still manages to fall into a lot of stereotypes and unoriginal story beats. The story is told to us through a series of flashbacks, with the story being narrated by an ex-Soviet soldier who is being detained and interrogated by his superior officer. This narrative of a once loyal and fanatical Soviet soldier who became disillusioned after seeing thousands of his comrades die in suicidal attacks and then is not given the hero's return they might expect. It's been done better. Company of Heroes 2 was released 3 years after Call of Duty Black Ops, and this Reznov ripoff is not told anywhere near as well. It also falls into the use of other stereotypes of the Eastern Front, like General Winter and Order 227. For those of you not familiar, General Winter is an often used term to describe the Russian winter that the Germans were ill prepared to deal with. It grounds their usual lightning-fast blitzkrieg tactics to a halt. However, the effects of the Russian winter are often overblown, and they don't really take into account the fact that it was German fuel shortages that impacted them just as much, if not more so, than the winter. Also, Order 227, the not one step back order, is also infamous to the point of caricature in media depictions of Soviet armies. The order to shoot retreating soldiers was loosely followed at best by Russian officers who saw the use of manpower to block and kill their own comrades as a complete waste. More often than not, retreating soldiers faced a court-martial and were then sentenced to penal battalions. My point is that these are two aspects that Company of Heroes leans into. I think it was supposed to make the game feel more brutal, but personally, I think it makes the game feel gimmicky. I'll begin this segment where I left off. Company of Heroes 2 has tried to inject its sequel with some new gameplay mechanics to spice things up from the original. Company of Heroes 2 tries to bring the idea of General Winter to the game. The use of weather could have been interesting, I suppose, but largely it feels like it's taking away from the experience. Levels where I have to get my men from fire to fire in order to keep them warm sounds like it could have been a good idea on paper, but in reality it's just a bit annoying. The original Company of Heroes did not need gimmicks and pointless gameplay mechanics. It was simple, yet excellently done RTS gaming, where tactics, positioning and strategy are king. Company of Heroes 2 is a perfect example of someone attempting to fix what ain't broke and messing it up. One last point I will make about the campaign is that they have really tried to push story elements, again to the detriment of the overall game. In the original, you were given a full map and told to capture key points and destroy key targets. How you traversed that map and approach those objectives was up to you. Company of Heroes 2's campaign feels an altogether more on-the-rails affair, with you travelling from point to point, doing exactly what you're told in the way you're told to do it. The feeling I got from the first game of using flanking manoeuvres and securing key areas is not gone entirely, but somewhat neutered in Company of Heroes 2. Now, I've just said a lot of bad things about this game, and I would hate for you to get the impression that Company of Heroes 2 is a bad game. It isn't. Far from it. It is simply disappointing in the context of the excellent gaming experience that preceded it. Company of Heroes 2 still has all the fantastic squad and cover-based gameplay that the original boasted. The feeling of importance attached to your men and your armour is still there, and it makes for some truly epic encounters and devastating battles. I just wish they'd let us off the leash a little and let us do it our own way. That sense of controlling key points on a map is still very much there in skirmish battle modes, and perhaps this is why, as a multiplayer experience, Company of Heroes is still, rightfully, a very popular game. There was a 7-year gap between the two Company of Heroes titles, and the first thing I noticed when firing up the sequel was how beautiful the game was. The graphics in the first Company of Heroes were good, but they really got stepped up a notch in the sequel. And all the excellent things that I said about the sound design of the weapons and armour in the first game carry over here too. The gameplay experience is definitely enhanced by the phenomenal work they did in making the battles feel visceral and real. If there is one aspect of the sound design that lets this game down, then it is the voice acting. I talked earlier about Company of Heroes 2 falling into stereotypes, but the accents on display here feel less like a genuine Russian accent and more Zoya the Destroyer from Glow. The Germans too have awful acting, and it would have been better just to have them speak German rather than the ham-fisted attempts we get here. I mentioned the story earlier, but the cutscenes are a mixed bag. The ones setting up the levels can be pretty good looking and intense. The ones where we are forced to listen to two bad Russian accents giving us exposition in an interrogation room, they're less good. Not too much to say here on the presentation. It can be succinctly summed up by simply saying everything to do with the gameplay is good, everything to do with the story is not bad exactly, but not great either. I think there's an easy way to sum up my feelings on this game, and that is that I got it for free. It was being given away on Steam a couple of years ago, so I downloaded it, played it a little, and didn't touch it again until I decided to do this review. I think Manchester band James in their song Sit Down have given me a great line to express my thoughts on it. If I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. If the first Company of Heroes game didn't exist, then this Company of Heroes would be lauded as a good game. But it does exist, and the sequel is undoubtedly a step back. So let's break it down. The premise. Prose. It tells a story that is often overlooked in games and other media. The cons. Despite that pro, it somehow still falls into stereotypes and unoriginal story beats. The gameplay. Pros. The same excellent use of tactical gameplay from the original. The cons. Gimmicky gameplay mechanics make the game feel like a mess at times. And an on-the-rails campaign experience which lacks the freedom of the original game. The presentation. Pros. Excellent graphics and sound design. The cons. Poor voice acting. When giving this game a score, I have to be careful to be objective. What would this game get if it wasn't a sequel to one of the greatest strategy games ever? How would I feel if I wasn't disappointed when looking back at its predecessor? Company of Heroes 2 is not as good as the original. However, objectively, it is still a good game. So that's why I'm going to give Company of Heroes 2 a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. What did you think of Company of Heroes 2? Am I being overly critical here? Perhaps I'm being too generous. Are you looking forward to Company of Heroes 3? Sound off in the comments below and tell me what should get the classic review treatment in future. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I'm Strat Tom, and I'll see you next time.